Hey guys, Roman Tressler here, and today I got a special treat. Today I am with John Norwood here, who was a finalist for Forge and Fire Season 6, Episode 17? 17?
Yeah, 17. Yeah.
All right, and I'm not going to tell you if he won or lost. That's up to you to figure it out. But he became a finalist. He got all the way to the very end, and then you'll figure out from there. Amazing smith, all right, one of the most humble guys I've ever met. So I know this is not my typical forging video where I show you how to make a bottle opener, leaf, or something along those lines. But since I was in the area here, he actually invited me over, and I wasn't going to turn it down. So thank you for having me here.
I'm happy to have you.
And I got to have a look around his shop here, and maybe I'll do a quick thing here a little bit later so you guys can see. But very, very awesome smith. If you haven't seen any of his stuff, go check him out. I'm going to put a bunch of links in the description for you guys to follow. Old Hickory Forge on YouTube. I think Old Hickory Forge as well on Instagram.
Facebook,
Instagram.
And Etsy as well.
And Etsy, yeah. So actually some great products. I already told him I'm probably going to buy one of his hammers because I got to look at him up close and personal ones that he's already making. Fantastic quality workmanship. All right, guys, check all that stuff out. I'm probably going to plug him in here religiously, so he's not paying me to do it either. All right, so what's going on today, guys? I just want to have a quick interview with him so you can learn a little bit more about him. If you've seen him on Forge and Fire, it's probably the only time you ever saw him. But we're going to dive down into who is John, what's he all about, couple little things here. I do have a little bit of scripted questions here, but I'm pretty sure we're going to go off topic a few times. So bear with us. So with that, we're going to get started. John, thank you again for having us here. Anything, let's just start at basic. Tell us a little about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what kind of got you started into smithing, all that fun jazz.
Okay, well, I'm John Norwood. Obviously, we done talked about that. But I'm from a little town called Pittsboro, North Carolina, and I moved to Hickory, North Carolina, where I live now, maybe 4 years ago or so. I've kind of been into blacksmithing since I was a teenager. I got into it back in high school, and then when I was in the military, I didn't have a lot of time to practice. And then when I got out, I started messing with it a little more. And then when I was a bail bondsman, that was a job that left me with a lot of free time. So I started building up smithing as a side business. Made a little money here and there, upgraded my equipment, and before you knew it, I had a professional grade shop down here.
So just because he has now industrial type equipment, some of the work that he's made in the past, if you ever check out his videos and stuff, it's phenomenal work. He did all by hand beforehand. So don't think that you can't go out making like these beautiful, hammers and axes, and he makes a lot of like some of the axes videos I watched you make. Even when you were on Forge and Fire, you didn't have this yet. No. So the stuff that he put out, guys, it was fantastic with literally just stuff that you can get at Harbor Freight or whatever. He made his own 2x72, which he has a video up on there. He made all that, but fantastic, setup he's got going on here. And did you hear, kids? He started with the Harbor Freight cast iron anvil. So we're gonna get to that here in just a second. So now we kind of know a little bit about where you're from. He is from obviously here, and you were in the military. So real quick, what did you do in the military? What was your job?
I was in the field artillery.
So you're blowing things up.
Pretty much, yeah. Like
Okay.
the big guns, with the 155 millimeter, 100-pound explosive bullets. That was us.
Okay. Where were you stationed?
Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and I did a year in Kunar Province, Afghanistan.
But hey, thank you for your service nonetheless.
Thank you for yours.
So he's a veteran guy, so that's awesome there. So all right, so now you get out of the military. Now before we're gonna go back in time a little bit. What got you into blacksmithing in particular? Was there something like, hey, this just looks cool? What, like, around how old were you? What made you?
I was around 16 or 17. I had to do a graduation project for high school, and they kind of wanted to be on something kind of artsy. And I didn't really have anything in mind, and they started pairing us with mentors. And one of mine was a woman by the name of Tamara Mullinax or Mullinig, something like that. But she was an artist blacksmith, and she did a lot of fabrication work, and she took me to her house and showed me some of her sculptures. And I was just amazed at it, and I was like, this is what I want to do. And I started messing around with it a little more and more, and I just fell in love with it.
Awesome. So when you got out of the military, obviously, in case you guys don't know this, when you're in the military, they frown upon you doing any kind of blacksmithing on base in your barracks. You're not allowed to have a George Foreman in your barracks, let alone a forge outside of it.
They'll give you a machine gun, but you're too stupid to have a hot plate.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like, listen, we taught you how to use a machine gun, not a hot plate. So obviously you get out of the military, you're gonna pick up the hobby back up again. What did you kind of have when you first started? Like, all right, so you're picking up the hobby again. What were your bare bone, like not bare bone basic? What were the tools that you had at your disposal?
My first starting out, what I had was a little coal forge we'd built out of a brake drum in the lid of a 55-gallon drum. We'd suck it down into it to make a table. We built the fuel air assembly out of 2-inch pipe, and we hooked a hairdryer to it. You know, most guys start with that. And my first anvil was actually a piece of railroad track that was given to me by that mentor in high school. And it actually broke in half at the waist. I know a lot of people out there talk up railroad track like it's indestructible, but I have broken a railroad track anvil. So that was when I got the Harbor Freight cast iron anvil, and that thing served me well for a good few years before I upgraded.
Okay. What kind of hammer? Just whatever, because I know people ask me that question like, "Hey, what kind of hammer should I get?" Where whatever. What hammer did you use?
My first hammer was a 3-pound fiberglass handled Stanley sledgehammer.
Okay.
And eventually I knocked the fiberglass handle out of it, put a wooden handle on it, and in a lot of my earlier YouTube videos, you can see me using that hammer. And my dad has it now,
okay.
So it's still working.
So overall, your whole setup was pretty inexpensive. So it was literally like
built out of scrap.
There you go. So listen. So this is for all the new guys who are looking to start. I wasn't far off from where he started. I'm not going to talk about me in this video, but you heard what he used: a Harbor Freight anvil, a homemade coal forged anvil using a brake drum and a 50-gallon drum. You might not be able to find a 50-gallon drum, but you don't need one. And just a Stanley, sledgehammer that you probably picked up at a Walmart or something, whatever,
My dad was a carpenter, so there were always tools laying around. Right. So I grabbed the first thing that looked like a blacksmith hammer I saw and used it.
So, and you were able to obviously make things, and that obviously progressed to where we're at today. So if you're ever wondering, what can you start with? You can start with the Harbor Freight anvil.
Yeah.
I did, and it lasted me, and I still use it. And he said he used it for many years, and look at this dude. Look at him compared to me. I am on a slight hill, but not much. This dude probably lays into the middle a lot more than I do. Okay, so yeah. So that lasts. So anybody says it falls apart, prove it. Post pictures of it falling apart. I dare you. Okay, the burden of proof lies on you.
Like I said, I've broken a track anvil, but I haven't broken a Harbor Freight anvil. So.
I'm not saying Harbor Freight anvils are great anvils. Though.
They're not. No, they're not.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they work. Okay, so one of the now let's just say with all the bare bone basic stuff you started, what was one of the first things, if you can remember, that you made? What was like one of the very first things?
The very first thing I tried to make was a pair of tongs out of rebar. Because I was in the mindset that a smith should make all their own tools, and
right.
I'm going to make the tools I need to make these other tools, and they ended up breaking. Obviously, well, not obviously, you can make good tongs out of them, but I didn't know what I was doing. And the second thing I tried to make was a sword, also out of rebar. I didn't know what in the world I was doing. It broke too. So
well, you learned.
Yeah, you live, you learn.
All right, so let's if you want to talk to the people out there, they're first starting out, they're looking, they got their Devil's Forge, they got their Harbor Freight anvil and a Harbor Freight cross peen hammer. All right, what would you recommend as the first thing that they would make? Like say, listen, the first thing you should make is, what would John recommend?
What I would say is go to like a scrapyard or a salvage yard and get you a chunk of coil spring, like it's something along the lines of a spring steel, and make you some punch and chisels out of it.
Yeah.
Like if you have a punch and chisel set, you can do pretty much anything you need to do starting out. Like say if you need to make tongs or punch the hole, trim to size, you got a punch and a chisel to cut into punch with. So if you had nothing else, the very first thing I would make would be a punch and chisel set.
Okay. So nothing like working on technique, just like straight up make your tools, because you mess up the tool, you got to make another one.
Yeah.
Is there a particular reason why like punch and chisel? Just because you're working on tapering, you're working on length and flattening and all that stuff?
Yeah, you're working on tapering, you're working on isolating to some degree, but you need those tools to make other tools.
Right,
so
that is true.
Yeah,
So, like, for example, if you got to make a leaf, which is what I was told to make, and I did, but I bought my own chisels. So I didn't have a chisel to put the veins in the leaf.
Texturing and
so, and that is true. Now, the texturing is a different story. I do differently than I think most people. But
everybody does it a little different.
But either way, it was still. So here you go, guys. He says make chisels, and I actually probably will listen to a punch and chisel. I'll probably actually listen to him because I actually learn a lot from his videos. Now you've been smithing now. Let's just say not back when you were in high school. Let's take that whole situation. Now, how long have you been smithing now since you actually started up when you got out of the military?
maybe 4 years, maybe 3.5, 4 years. I did it part-time for just a couple of years while I still worked and everything, and then I went full-time maybe 8 or 9 months ago.
Okay. So, check this out, guys. I started when I was 15, the same thing as him, and I stopped for a while. I've now been forging for about same length, 4 or 5 years as him. He is night and day better than me. Just way better. But he has a lot more time working and forging than what I would. No,
That's true.
He spends a lot of time doing this. So just because you have 4 or 5 years worth of work doesn't mean you can't put out immaculate work. In fact, in a little bit, we're going to showcase some of the stuff that he has put out. And I know guys who've been forging for 20, 30 years. I mean, they said if you want to go back to when we first started, I've been doing it since I was 15, so 19 years. But I had like a 7-year gap of not doing anything, you know. But other guys who've done it religiously for 20 years and it can't put out half the work. A lot of it comes down to being behind the anvil and practice. So with that being said, do you recommend people take classes or just right away just start hammering on things? What do you recommend? So if these guys have $250 to buy equipment or take a class, what would you recommend they do?
I would buy the equipment.
Yeah.
Because then you'll have it. Like, say, I'm a very hands-on learner. Like, I can read an entire book and not know anything more than what I like. But if I spend 10 minutes out at the anvil, you know, banging on some steel, I am going to know more than when I started. So it's, I don't know, to me, the experience of figuring it out yourself is more valuable than anything any class can teach you. Now, that's not to say there's anything wrong with classes. It's just, I guess it just depends on what kind of learner you are. Like, you know, so if I was just starting out and I had $250 to spend on equipment or take a class, I would spend on equipment because then, you know, you buy it once and you've got it. Versus you spend the money on the class once and then you got to make the money back to buy the equipment.
Right. I actually completely agree. That's my same logic because
it all just comes down to kind of how your brain works and how your hands work, and you know, some people could go take a class and come out of it 1,000 times better than they were, and that's good for them. But for me, I'm pretty much self-taught. Like, so it's, I don't know, I'd rather just buy the equipment and figure it out myself.
All right, so as time's going on, clearly you've gotten better. I mean, it's obvious. We just talked about literally this is all you do now. This is your job now. You are a full-time smith. So as time went on, so after a year or two of doing this, when you were still a bail bondsman, what was one of the things you did to kind of push yourself to be a little better? You felt you were more at the intermediate level. What was one of the first things you can say, like, you know what, I want to try something more complex? What was it that you did?
Damascus, actually.
Damascus. That's not that's like advanced.
Yeah. Well, doing Damascus by hand, it's just if you can do it by hand, you're never going to have a problem once you get power tools like a press or a power hammer. So it's like a lot of people look at Damascus steel blades and they get really intimidated, but it's so I would say if you consider that advanced, just in general forge welding, like if you can, like, wrap die tomahawks or anything like that, that's something I would consider that intermediate level.
Okay.
So it's anything involving forge welding. If you can do that and get good at it, it's just going to open so many doors in terms of what you're able to accomplish.
Right. Now, the only reason why I always say that was like advanced because I've seen guys who are professionals, and I'm not talking about on Forge and Fire because that's a competition, guys. All right, that's competition. There's guys on there doing it for 30 years who are amazing smiths, and they just had a stroke of bad luck or whatever. So just understand that's a competition. It does not actually really truly tell you how their skill level.
Luck has a good bit to do with it.
But making Damascus, I've seen guys on other YouTube channels stuff who go to make Damascus. They made it. These guys been doing it for 20 years, and they make their first build of Damascus, and it comes out like straight trash. And that's just because they didn't have the experience working on it. So I mean, if that's what you think is an intermediate level, then that's what you think. I just want to know what it is for you. Like I said, like me, I'm like, what's your intermediate thing? I'm like, I don't know. It's stuff like a nice flat back knife, that works on your taper and stuff. But then again, like I said, you advanced tremendously a lot since you first started. I mean, like I said, your work shows it. So. Right, there you go. So Damascus. Now Damascus itself, the theory behind it's pretty simple. I mean,
it is.
It's not that hard.
It's really not that complex. It's just a lot of work. It's you have to be able to forge weld it. It can go wrong at a lot of steps. And if you're doing it especially by hand, you're not going to make huge high layer count billets. Like, you're probably not going to make anything larger than a billet for like a kitchen knife or something like that. But it I don't know. It's, to me, that was one of the first big projects I took on. I'd say when I really tried to take a big step forward,
Right.
was I wanted to make Damascus.
So when you finally got to that more advanced stage, which is what I would think about, like what was the first thing that you made that was just like that was the hardest thing you've ever made that was you considered like advanced? Like, hey, you know what, you really want to push yourself? You said making Damascus, but like let's say you made the Damascus. Did you turn that Damascus into something that was like?
I did. I don't have that blade anymore, but it was an 80-layer twist pattern billet. I started out with 5 layers, and I cut it and folded it 510 4 times, or no, I don't know, until I got to 80 layers. I cut it and folded it, and then I took it down to a square stock. I twisted it, and I forged a very small little paring-style kitchen knife out of it. Looking back, that wasn't a very good knife. The geometry was pretty crappy, but it was Damascus, and I made it by hand, and I was happy with it.
All right, so what was the hardest build you ever had? Like, in your opinion, like if you said, you know what, this last Roman Gladius was the hardest.
I would actually say that last Roman Gladius was probably one of the hardest builds I've ever done.
You look like you knew. I hate to say it, but you look like you knew what you were doing the whole time. You look well. You did a good job.
I edited out a lot of the things where I look stupid in my videos. So
I was like, you looked very like, hey, this is what's gonna happen, and I was like, this guy knows this stuff, you know. So all right, well, cool. So would you think a very good now some of the more advanced guys out there, I know that they do watch a lot of these things here, and I get critiqued all the time by them. What would be something, somebody who's been forging for a while, they're making axes, they're making Damascus, something. What would you consider to be like a very good challenging build for them to try to really push themselves? Obviously, that Gladius you said was probably one of the most challenging. Would you say something to that extent where it has? Well, you had how many parts to that sword was there? It was
6 or 7. Anything like any type of dagger or sword with a complex through hilt construction where you have to have several different pieces that all marry up together perfectly. And it's that was making the handle was more challenging than making the blade.
Right.
Because once you've made one blade, you can make most blades. Like
right.
It's a pretty similar process more or less. But anything with, like I said, with a really complex through handle construction, is if you can move more towards that, it's also going to open a lot of doors for you on what you're able to accomplish.
Okay. All right, so now that wasn't your first sword you ever made.
Nope.
No, what was the first sword you ever made?
The first sword I ever made was an attempt at something like a Viking sword.
Okay.
And it came out okay for my first sword, but I threw it away not too long ago, so it really wasn't that great. But it was I made the blade out of 5160. It had a fuller that I had forged in and then gone over with one of the little 2-inch contact wheels on the sander. And then all the fittings were mild steel and the handle was just maple that I burned black. And, it wasn't a horrible sword, but it wasn't, with what I learned pretty quickly after that, I was like, I could do better.
Right. It was just a first attempt, though. Usually most people's first attempt never comes out the way they want it.
Yeah.
That's pretty common. So, all right, so we have to ask. All right, so I'm assuming by the time people see this, everybody's going to recognize you probably from Forged in Fire. So, we're going to talk about your experience on Forged in Fire just a little bit. And there's so much more than just Forged in Fire. And I know there's a lot of smiths out there that have some gripes with Forged in Fire, and I know that's generally not how you feel about it, but we'll get into all of that. So, just tell us a little bit about your experience with Forged in Fire. How was it for you? Don't have to give us all the nitty gritty. I'm sure there's things like this. Even when the competition's over, you can't talk about certain things.
Yeah, you sign a pretty binding non-disclosure agreement.
But otherwise, just tell us your overall experience with it. I mean,
I had a lot of fun. All the guys I went with were really cool. The judges are super cool and super friendly. The equipment's nice. They make it pretty idiot proof. Like they tell you where to be and when to be there, and they have people whose job it is to get you there. You don't really. All you have to do is show up, and that's pretty much it.
Is this now during the actual competition or anything else like that? Actually, let's back up. So the other competitors there was there like any like real trash talking or anything like that? Everybody was pretty cool.
Everybody was really humble and really cool about it.
That makes for horrible reality TV then.
Yeah, well that they don't put that in the final edit. But we all got along super great. Like Phil, the guy I made it to the finals with, he Be Ready Blade Works is his company. But he was a great dude. Matt, I don't remember his last name, but Matt, and then Ian, the other guy I was with. anyway, they were all cool dudes. And
Yeah.
we had a good time. Even, in between takes, we're just sitting around talking.
Mm.
It's not like, oh, I'm going to beat you. You suck.
Oh, that's cool. So, if you had the opportunity to do it again, let's say they want to bring back past contestants, would you be willing to go back on there again?
In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
It was such a cool experience. It was so much fun. I'd go back in a heartbeat.
Now, did Forge and Fire hurt you, like, business-wise or anything like that at all? Or did it help you?
I think it actually helped me a lot.
Yeah.
So just because people had seen me and knew who I was and that I was a smith, and a lot of local people approached me because like, hey, this dude lives in my town, and so it was a good chance for me to kind of get my name out there and help spread the craft.
So, Forge and Fire, even though I'm not giving away what happened, even though Forge and Fire, right, you were not, at that time, if I remember correctly, you even stated you were a bail bondsman.
Yes, I was still part-time when I went on the show.
You was a part-time smith. Now you're a full-time smith. Would you say because of Forge and Fire, it may not be directly, but getting your name out there and stuff like that has helped you become a full-time smith?
Definitely. It's definitely helped.
So you're just being on there alone has really
it's
kind of like a free advertisement that you didn't have to pay
much
for.
Even if you get sent home in the first round, people see you and they know who you are.
Right.
And somebody's going to Google you. It's even guys. I've talked to guys who go out in the first round, and it still helps their business. So I'm just going on the show.
Now, real quick, so people understand that it is a competition. So a lot of things we talk about, you said there's a lot of luck involved in this stuff. A lot of these smiths that do get kicked out in the first round, they're still generally really good smiths.
Oh, yeah.
These guys still are like, phenomenal smiths.
Like Walter Sorrells, he went out in round 2.
Yeah.
But he's one of the most skilled and talented smiths in the world.
Yeah.
It's just his blade broke during the strength test. And, that's... Like blades break during the quench, they warp during the quench. All you can do is normalize it 3 times, keep an eye on your temperature, and hope for the best. But sometimes things just happen.
Yeah, and when I found out he was going on Forged and Fire, now I've been following his stuff before Forged and Fire. Now, before Forged and Fire came out, actually, correction here, I never knew about Forged and Fire until season 4 because I didn't have cable or internet.
Yeah.
For the first few years. So I had heard about Walter Sorrells, right? I knew who he was. I actually knew who you were because a lot of times a lot of smiths follow each other on YouTube channels, Instagram, Facebook, stuff like that. And he was talking about, he's like, guys, next video I'm going to talk about my experience in Forge and Fire. I'm like, what is this Forge and Fire? It was actually because of Walter Sorrells' videos that I knew about Forge and Fire. And unfortunately, he did lose in the second round. And I was just as surprised, but... he is a fantastic smith. So if you ever see a smith that loses in round 1, 2, or even the final round,
don't just be like, okay, that guy sucks.
He's not. They're actually all really good. You don't understand. Tends to be kind of like a qualifying aspect to get onto the show.
There's a somewhat rigorous selection process before they even put you on the show. So it's, if you get to the first round, you more or less can be expected to know what you're doing.
Yeah, so these are all good smiths. So check them all out. They're all fantastic smiths. I'm not knocking anybody that's been on the show and that's lost or anything like that. So during the rounds, like your round 1, which is you actually forging out the blade. So real quick, what was the name of your episode?
The partisan spear.
Okay, which is like a spear axe thing.
Yeah,
right?
It's like a medieval pole arm type deal.
So you had to disassemble a forge. All right, a perfectly good forge in my opinion, right? And you had to do that, and you pretty much did a fancy Sanmai type thing.
Yeah. What they did was they gave us a piece of 1-inch round steel, 5 inches long, and they wanted a blade with a recurve 8 to 10 inches, and it wasn't enough material, so they were like, cut up the forges and use the mild steel from the body to do a Sanmai to get enough material to make the blade. So that's what we had to do.
And he was being Hulk and smashing it and getting the things apart, which was pretty awesome. So, when you were going through that whole first round, did you have anything planned out? Like, all right, this is what I'm going to do first, and then this, or were you just kind of like, fly by the seam of your pants kind of thing to see what?
They give you a 10-minute design period before the challenge actually starts, and that was enough time for me to figure out everything I wanted to do. In terms of how much material I was going to use, how I was going to stack up the billet, how I wanted the blade to look. If you see the episode, my drawing looked nothing like my finished blade, but it happens.
You already kind of, so in a sense, you had a plan worked out. It's what you're going to do, and you kind of stuck with that time frame. So you're like, all right, I'm going to get this forge all together, spend 45 minutes forging this out, then to the grinder, then after 20 minutes, that quench. I mean, I'm just spitballing.
There was no time blocks or anything like that, but I knew it was like I got to weld up the billet, I got to draw it out, I got to forge the blade, grind the blade, heat treat the blade, and that's just do it as fast as you can within reason.
All right, so you kind of somewhat had a plan in place, and do you think that contributes to your success to get around two because you kind of established this is what needs to happen in this order?
I would think so, yeah. That's not the kind of thing you really want to go into just winging it.
Okay.
Like, you do need to have some kind of basic plan of what you're going to do after they tell you. As soon as they say, here's what the challenge is, your brain needs to start working.
Mm-hmm. So, you make it past round one, you get into round two. Now, you have 2 hours. For some reason, I thought you had to 3. 2 hours.
I thought we did 2. I didn't know we had 2 until they said 2 hours, and I was like, wait, what?
So you got 2 hours, so that was a shocker.
Yeah.
Yeah, because now that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, oh no, 2 hours. So you got 2 hours to make a handle. Now, you have an hour less than your previous competitors on this. Same thing. Did you have a plan set up?
The plan was just to make something that I know is going to go together without any trouble, and I know is going to be strong. So if you watch the episode, I chose to stack up pieces of my Carta and make a stacked handle. They told us we had to do a screw-on pommel, and that was the only real stipulation, was you had to have a screw-on pommel. So I was like, okay, I'm going to throw a guard on, I'm going to stack up some of my Carta, I'm going to screw a block of brass onto the end, and I'm going to shape out the handle, and that's that. And, that's because stacked micarta, you don't have to worry about drilling a long hole through a block or anything like that, or it breaking on you. You don't have to try to mess around with the burn-through tang. It takes a little longer to set up, but as soon as I started putting it together, I knew it was going to go together. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to hit any unexpected roadblocks. I cut the time a little close, but I knew it was going to work.
Okay. So, same. All right. So, you still kind of had a plan already established, all right? So, that was it. So, you had a plan. Now, come testing. They're going to go ahead and they're going to torture test your blade, right? They're going to do things that you would never do. There's no way in real life you would take your knife and smash it into rocks, okay? Most people won't, right? Forge and fire, they're going to. They're going to bend it and they're going to then say, it will kill or cut. So, all right, so come testing. When they were testing your blade, were you nervous? Were you concerned? Like, what was going through your head? How were you feeling?
I was extremely nervous. I was just thinking in my head, I was like, please don't break, please don't break, please don't break. And I forget what order we did the test. The strength test was first, wasn't it? I believe it was. The fire brick chop. What we did with us was they had a fire brick and they bashed your knife into it and see how your knife held up. All right. So the strength test was our first test. It was the fire brick chop. First guy goes, everything goes great. And the second guy's knife breaks on like the 6th or 7th strike. Mm-hmm. And I was the last one to go. And they were like, John, your knife has to get through this many strikes for you to make it to the finals. So in my head, I'm just like, dear God, please don't break. And I'm counting as he's hitting the brick. I'm like, 1, 2, 3. And but it made it through. And
so when you made it through, and now you're gonna be a finalist. So you're gonna go home to your home forge. You're gonna make whatever it is they tell you to make. When you saw it was going to be a partisan, what were you thinking? Like,
I was like, how in the world am I going to make that? Like, and then, because when you walk out, you don't know what's under that curtain. Like, they want your reaction to be genuine. So all I see is this long curtain. I'm like, oh crap, it's going to be some crazy 6-foot-long Zweihander Flamberge sword or something like that. And they pull the cloth off, and it's this funky-looking Aquaman type spear thing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, because like I'd never made anything like it. I'd made spears, but never anything with that complex of a blade shape. So again, first thing, as soon as I saw it, my brain started working. How am I going to build this thing? Like, what am I going to do? What materials do I need? What processes am I going to use?
All right, so now you saw all of that. You got it kind of figured out. You get home. Comes time to build this thing. Everybody knows you only have 4 days. Now 4 days for the build, right?
Yep.
35 hours.
Yeah, 35 hours.
35 hours, right? So you have 35 hours to build this thing. Now, this obviously you got a little bit of time with travel and stuff. I'm assuming you were kind of planning out things. And
we actually got lucky because we filmed the first 2 rounds around like December 21st, 22nd, right. And then we had Christmas break before we started. Normally it's a lot faster. Like, say if you film round 1 and 2 on Monday, that Friday you're filming round 3. So, but luckily we had a good couple of weeks in between, so I had a lot of time to mull this over. I actually even made a practice spear out of mild steel to see if the process I had in my mind was going to work.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did, because I ran into a few problems that I,
could iron out.
Yeah, that I could figure out how to fix now when I wasn't on the clock.
So, all right, so now when you saw that, did you have to make any adjustments to your shop, to your equipment? Do you think, all right, I need to make a new forge, or were you pretty much already pretty set?
I was pretty set. I had to be a little creative when trying to get by and trying to heat treat the blade and everything, but I had everything I needed.
All right, cool beans. All right, so now come day that you're going to test your partisan, all right? Now, I'm not going to give away any of the information on what happens. I just want to know how John was feeling up to the moment of the test. Maybe later on, after a couple of weeks, I'll do a Skype thing with him, and we'll talk about how he felt afterwards. Was he elated or whatever, all right? So, all right, so you're getting ready to test your partisan, all right? What was it? What was you think? What were you thinking? Like, all right, you saw Phil's.
Yeah, Phil went first.
All right, and then it was yours.
And then it was mine.
What were you thinking this whole time?
I was hoping mine did as good as his, because he did really well on the kill test.
Yeah.
And but it was just so cool and so much fun. I was so excited to watch Doug Marcaida take the spear I made and go at this dummy with it. And it was just a lot of fun. I was nervous, but I knew the blade was sharp, so I figured it would do well.
So were you really happy to hear him say, "It will kill"?
I was very happy.
That's like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody wants their weapon to kill.
That's good. It killed well. All right, so now Forge and Fire is over. So that's just a small tidbit of him and his blacksmith thing with the Forge and Fire thing. Now we're going to go carry on to now post Forge and Fire. All right, so now you did your Forge and Fire. Now you're a local celebrity for a week and a half.
Yeah.
You know,
Sometimes weirdos at the post office know who you are. And
yeah, like I watched you make that knife. So, you guys do like a viewing party up here or anything like that?
I didn't. No. My family back in Pittsburgh had a small get together. I actually purposely said I didn't want a big party with extended family, because then I'd have had to deal with answering the same questions over and over and over again, and having to pause it every 3 seconds for somebody to ask you something. So it's like, I don't, it was me, my parents, my sister, and my niece and nephew.
Okay.
That were there, and that was it.
So now Forge and Fire is over. Obviously, we talked about now because of Forge and Fire, business actually picked up for you, which is fantastic. I'm glad to see a local blacksmith here in North Carolina. Because of this television show, is now runs his own business here. Which do you have a specific name for your business?
Old Hickory Forge.
Okay, so it's same thing as his YouTube, Old Hickory Forge. Do you have a name for your smithy by any chance? Old Hickory Forge?
Old Hickory Forge, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because some people will call one thing like their business. I'm just gonna throw up a spitball. Like they'll, like, for example, let's say your business Old Hickory Forge, but you might call your smithy John Smithy.
I know what you're getting at. Yeah.
So I just didn't know if that was the case, but no, yours is all simple.
Just Old Hickory Forge across the board.
Okay. All right, so now you're done with Forge and Fire. You're back here. You're now making knives full time. I'm actually interrupting his process here longer than I should. And you make a lot of work. Now you do a lot of charity builds now.
I do.
So what's the charity that you are really passionate about? What's the name of the charity that you do a lot of these builds for?
Well, I try to change it up, but I mostly center on like things for veterans or things for children or things for animals. Like I've donated to Feeding America, the Humane Society. Mission 22 was my most recent one there.
Right.
A charity dedicated to helping fight veteran suicide. And so I made a Gladius, and then I raffled it off on my social media, and then all the money after shipping costs, which the sword went to Ireland, so it ended up costing a good bit of money to ship it. But everything that was left after shipping was donated. So that was that's just something that I like to do.
So now you don't have that or anything like that, but do you mind showing us a few of your current works that you have going on right now? Down to be charity, but just things you've made in the past, current work, so these guys can see the quality you put out. Now, mind you guys, this is not an industrial thing where he's got mills and CNC. This is all hand tool stuff, and this stuff is phenomenal. The biggest piece of equipment he has is this amazing press he has behind us. All right, and and he just got this, how long ago?
Maybe September of last year, so maybe 6 months.
So not that long ago. And he was making phenomenal things beforehand.
My first 50 or so hammers were made completely by hand.
Yeah. So actually, if you want, grab some of your stuff here. Let's take a look at it, and so we can see some of the work you're putting out. So there's right here. I'll let you talk about this. This is yours. I don't know nothing about your stuff.
Well, a lot of my business these days is actually tools for other smiths. So this is just one of my production model 3-pound cross-peen hammers. It's serial numbered. It's got my maker's mark. Handle's made of ash. It's handmade. Another thing I make a lot of is axes. This is a Viking-style bearded fighting axe seated on a tomahawk handle. It's 1075 with an asymmetrical forge weld. Cutting edge is right at 5.5 inches. Got my mark on that. And then every so often I'll take on like a custom commissioned high-end blades. Like this is 128 layer Damascus. Handle is elk bone. The bolster is wrought iron from an old wagon tire. So there's that.
So, and the camera does no justice when I tell you this stuff looks amazing. It really is. It does no justice. In fact, I kept apologizing. He's got so much stuff he's making outside. I kept stepping on it. He's like, dude, don't worry. It's not even finished yet. I mean, always in here foraging is clearly a passion of yours. So by being able to go now full time, has your passion for foraging, your love for it diminished at all, or do you think it's increased, or what's the?
I won't say that it's diminished, but you know, after making 150, 160 hammers, yeah, you're doing the same thing over again. So that's a bit of advice I will offer to any part-time smiths who are considering going full time, especially if. Now, by no means am I complaining. I've been very fortunate with how much work I've gotten, but you know, you do need to consciously force yourself to set aside time for your own personal projects and to make things that you want to make. Like you need to keep stoking that fire. You know,
right.
If all you ever do is make hammers or anything like that, you're gonna get bored with it. You're gonna like it less and less, and eventually it's just gonna be like a 9-to-5 job, and you're gonna be hating your life. So it's, you know, that's a bit of advice I will offer to any part-timers who are considering going full time. Force yourself to set aside time for personal projects.
It's good advice. Actually, it's fantastic advice. I've talked to other smiths in the past where that was a problem where and that's not even just in the blacksmithing community. We're talking woodworking, all that stuff.
Anything.
Where they had such great joy doing it as a hobby, but when they turned it into a business, they just
when you have timelines and obligations, and it's just. You know, by no means am I complaining. A lot of people would love to do what I do, and I do love what I do. But you do need to make time for yourself to keep that, creative juice flowing.
Last thing here, last question. You're going to give advice to any of these cool cats out here who are going to try to go on Forge and Fire or pick up, let's say one of each. Advice for guys who are looking to do Forge and Fire. What would be something you can recommend?
Learn to forge weld. That and practice your canister Damascus. The canister Damascus can be done by hand. I've done it. It's just
great video, by the way. Go check it out.
Yeah, you just need to get an idea of the process and how to do it. You don't want the first time you do canister to be when you got 3 hours to figure out how to do canister. So if you can forge weld and you can do canister, there really isn't a whole lot they can throw at you. So that, and of course practice making a blade in 3 hours and putting a handle on in 3 hours. But I mean, it's definitely possible. So if you're looking to get on the show, if you can forge weld, you'll be okay.
So, all right, now for the guys who are just starting out forging, they're not looking to go on Forge and Fire. What would be some advice that you would give these guys that's first starting out? Like, what would be just something for them to get started? What would be some advice for them?
The first few dozen things you make are probably going to look like crap. So it's don't look at professional smiths who have been doing it for 30 years and expect your work to look like that right away. It's a process, crawl, walk, run. So just pick a project you want to do and go for it. And if it doesn't turn out that way, it doesn't turn out that way. You can always try again. So that's just, I guess the best advice I can offer is just don't get discouraged, Don't look at Alex Steele and think I need to be that good, because that's just
unrealistic.
It's unrealistic. Yeah. You're pushing yourself out of the gate too hard,
Okay. Well, guys, that's it for this little interview. I know it's a little bit long drawn out, longer than I thought it was going to be, but I kind of expected it a little bit. I was trying to be on time, but with that, thank you for watching, John. Thank you again for having me here and for this interview. Guys, if you got any comments, questions, suggestions, anything like that at all, please leave them down below. Don't forget to check out his YouTube channel, Old Hickory Forge. His Instagram is Old Hickory Forge. Facebook, Old Hickory Forge.
Etsy's Old Hickory Forge.
Yeah, on Etsy. Definitely check out his stuff on Etsy. He's got some great things. What you just saw, his axe, his hammer, the knives, is just some of the stuff that's on there. He's got a bunch of other things on there I have checked out. Check his stuff out. Subscribe to his channel. Subscribe to his Instagram. Do all that fun jazz. With that, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later.
Take care.